Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mette Morsing, and I'm the Dean here at Said Business School. Welcome to this distinguished speaker seminar here with us. Very, very pleased to see so many of you in the room here and also online with us. Many of you will be aware of the creation of the Ellison Institute of Technology in Oxford. It has received a lot of press and collaboration with Oxford University, and it will even have its own railway station. A little bit like Said Business School. Perhaps a few of you will know the details of the Institute's mission and of the exciting work it is seeking to undertake, aligning science, technology, policy, and entrepreneurship to address major global challenges, as well as its ambition to contribute to Oxford, the university and the city, and not least the UK's innovation ecosystem. It is therefore my true, real pleasure and honor for me to welcome this evening Professor Ono, Global President of Ellison Institute of Technology, to this very stage. And Professor Ono, you joined Ellison Institute of Technology in 2025, following the most senior leadership and presidency roles at the universities of Michigan, British Columbia, Cincinnati, and elsewhere. You bring with you an extraordinary reputation for designing and delivering innovative major projects, and delivering against the mission of the Ellison Institute of Technology will be this latest of your many challenges. And I think it was interesting for me to read up on your background and to understand you are an expert in immunology and experimental medicine as well. So you bring that to the university and to us also. And this evening we're going to hear first from Professor Ono himself with a short presentation of the origins, founding vision and ambition of the Ellison Institute of Technology itself. We will then be joined by my colleague Maria Zubeldia and the director of Oxford Said's Entrepreneurship Center. And you will lead, Maria, a conversation with Professor Ono before taking questions from you. So get prepared for some good questions towards the end of this speaker seminar this evening. And towards the very end of the conversation, after the conversation, of course, you will be very welcome to join us for drinks and nibbles in our main reception area, just where you entered upon coming here. So please help me warmly welcome Professor Ono. Thank
you. Your glasses. Are these yours? Oh, someone else's. Oh, they're yours. They're yours. Yeah. Well, it's really wonderful. It's an honor to be here with you this evening. I have heard so much about this school, the Said Business School, and I have been here now since mid-late August of last year, so a relatively short period of time. But I've tried to spread myself across this great university because at its very founding, Larry Ellison said to me when he asked me to come here that this relationship with Oxford University is incredibly important, and he felt it was very, very important for me to connect with the university community. I want to thank you for this opportunity to connect with you, to tell the remarkable story about what's happening at the Ellison Institute of Technology. It's relatively early days still. It's just about 2 years old. And we're humbled to be part of such a great institution as Oxford University. And we're so thrilled with the interactions and relationships that we've built thus far, but we want to build upon that even further moving ahead. So where's Tallulah? Tallulah is somewhere. She made these wonderful slides. Thank you, Tallulah, for doing that. Let's give her a thank you for creating these slides. And I think this probably means I have to move this train by myself. Is that correct? So I shall. I'll move to not that slide, but this one. This is what the Ellison Institute of Technology at Oxford will look like. It doesn't look like that yet. If you've driven by where we are building EIT Oxford, you can see almost a dozen or more cranes. It's the largest construction project I've seen at any university. And those of you who know my history, as you heard, I've worked at a number of universities, and that's saying a lot. I can tell you, when presidents of universities and vice chancellors get together, they say, oh, I have 4 cranes, and another one will say, I have 6 cranes. And I have to tell you that when you have, this is the first instance where I've seen over a dozen cranes simultaneously. So it gives you some sort of an idea of the size and scope of what's happening at EIT. And I can tell you that this is something that has attracted international attention. As we speak, at the Royal Society, presidents and vice chancellors from around the globe are meeting. There are members from the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, the AAU. President Barbara Snyder is here. The president of the American Association for the Advancement of Science is here. And they're talking about the importance of scientific collaboration and a commitment to global relationships in moving science forward. And I know that many of you are scientists, medical or otherwise, and I know you agree that interdisciplinary approaches to the most difficult problems are really the only way to go. And ensuring that there's exchange of ideas and of great people is really at the core of any advance that humankind has made, and is really at the core of innovation and entrepreneurship. So it's for that reason that I was so excited to be part of this larger ecosystem, but to be asked to be part of the Ellison Institute of Technology at Oxford by Larry Ellison. So this is what it's going to look like. And if you know Larry Ellison, you know that in addition to scientific excellence, he also really is very interested in design, form and function, the intersection of that, the role that architecture plays in inspiring and forming individuals at different stages in their evolution as a thinker. And so it's for that reason that, as is typical Larry Ellison, he really wanted to think quite a great deal about the buildings, what they look like, the spaces, how they promote interdisciplinary interaction, and even how the gardens contribute to an environment that stimulates people to think deeply, to pause, to talk with people who are engaged in different disciplines. And so that's at the core of his philosophy. And he found in Oxford University a very similar commitment, although 900 or more years older than EIT. He was, and we have been inspired by that same ethos, that same understanding that it matters how you organize buildings, it matters how the grounds are landscaped, it matters how you position laboratories and offices together. So there'll be a little bit in my short talk about just sort of a sneak preview of what EIT Oxford will look like. But just so you understand, the reason is because if you look at great universities like Oxford, and we studied them, and Johns Hopkins University with its iconic dome and the sculptures within it, we know that when you talk to people who've trained at these institutions, that they have been inspired by design and architecture and careful thought about how you inspire the youngest members of the academy. So this is an example of one of the main buildings. The vision for EIT Oxford has grown significantly over the past few months, and it is at the Oxford Science Park, and you'll see that in a subsequent slide. This dome here, you might see in the subsequent slide that it was inspired by the dome at Johns Hopkins and the dome at Oxford, the Radcliffe Camera. And so it's a much more modern example of such a dome in the center of what might be called quadrangles. This is just to give you sort of an idea of how I'm going to organize my talks. The first is I want to give you a general overview of what we want to accomplish, what is the mission and vision of EIT Oxford. The second, talk a little bit more granularly about the areas of work that we will focus on. A third, to talk about how, as I've said, the alliance, the relationship, the strategy between Oxford University and EIT is central to the vision and plan of what we're building here, and give you sort of a sneak preview of the campus, how I said it's been inspired by looking at other leading institutions, and then end with just a few snapshots of what the completed campus will look like. So let me start out with this. This is just a little quote from me. This is something I believe EIT is something which is really kind of unique. It takes sort of examples from academic institutions, from companies, from entrepreneurship centers, innovation centers, and brings them together into a single campus. And I guess if you compare sort of the magnitude and approach here to, for example, the Gates Foundation funding or the HHMI, you can see strands that are similar but strands that are distinct between the approach here at EIT and those other major investments in science focused on the human condition. What's unique, I think, about EIT is that from the very inception, there was a commitment to a campus, a multidisciplinary campus, one where there would be careful thought about what fields would be represented and how there would be crosstalk and synergy, and that how different disciplines would come together to solve a finite set of very, very challenging, if you might say, wicked problems. And so that's the initial kernel of the idea, is to create a place, a campus, that is committed not only to fundamental and basic science and investigation, but also one of the key pillars is that there will be education there at every level, at the undergraduate level, at the graduate level, at the postgraduate level, and that because the world needs solutions, end-to-end solutions for these very difficult global issues, there needs to be, from the very inception, from the people that we choose, whether they're the students or the faculty, a commitment that there will be a major laser focus on not just fundamental science, but also on the same campus, a commitment to actually move towards a solution. And that's the way EIT, as I've experienced it over the past few months, actually operates. We get weekly reports on progress across the different institutes that I will describe. And that's something I haven't experienced at Johns Hopkins or Harvard or UBC, where faculty and students are really left to a large part to be sort of their own metronome. At EIT, it's kind of a happy medium, if you will, where there's almost an urgency to move forward from science to translation with a weekly check-in on how are we doing. Are we closer to some of the milestones that we set forth on a given year? And so that is something that I think is unique. If you look at, for example, funding from the Gates Foundation, undeniably the impact has been enormous. But what's unique here, and I think is, for me, very attractive about Larry Ellison's vision, is that he understood the importance of people bumping into each other on the campus, near the water cooler, near in the dining room. And it's for that reason, and I think quite similarly to the Bell Laboratories, the idea, the hope is to create a campus with a critical mass committed to excellence in research and education across a set of complementary disciplines, empowered by this powerful engine of artificial intelligence, robotics, machine learning, and compute generously provided, that is the mix that is needed to make a quantum leap towards a solution, towards these very difficult problems. And the view is that one had to create this very, very methodically, strategically, this single campus built in a stepwise fashion to actually result in the solutions that we seek. So if you think about EIT, there's a campus like Bell Labs, there are fundamental laboratories, you'll see them, But there are also individuals that have quite a bit of experience in translational research and commercialization. And we knew from looking at other institutions, educational institutions, that often if you actually do a gap analysis, that one of the things that's missing is the serial entrepreneur. And you will see when you look at the faculty, many of them originally or currently at Oxford, that we have chosen faculty that are serial entrepreneurs, because that's really essential, because it is not straightforward to take a fundamental discovery and take it towards a solution, whether it's in medicine or whether it's in aviation or in agriculture. You really need fundamental science, but you also need to know how to move it in a very competitive commercial landscape so that it ends up being a solution which can be scaled as a company, but also as a product and brought to society. And so that's kind of the general idea about EIT. The idea is that science, fundamental science, applied science, education, and commercialization will reinforce each other on this new campus that we're creating. And I have to tell you, it's a very exciting place to be part of. And I guess the other part, secret ingredient, I would say, is putting it in this Oxford University ecosystem. It's incredibly important when you're trying to recruit people to EIT, because many scientists and many students want to be part of a larger university. And the fact that we are part of this ecosystem is incredibly attractive to me and to almost everyone that we have recruited to EIT Oxford. So that affiliation with Oxford has been critical to attracting the caliber of faculty, scientists, and students that we need to really make the kinds of advances that we want. So that's the general view, the vision, the mission of EIT Oxford. We want to translate fundamental science into solutions that have a real-world impact, and we want that impact to be transformational. And the idea was to focus on some of humanity's most difficult challenges. We need rigorous fundamental science, and we believe that the power of AI, machine learning, robotics, really will accelerate the generation of solutions towards each of these issues and push the boundaries of what can be accomplished in the ecosystem such as that here in Oxford. So I want to give you sort of an update on where we are. You can see here is a picture. Once again, this is sort of a future view. Some of these buildings already exist. They are being renovated. Some of the existing buildings have already been renovated, are being occupied. So one of the messages I want to share with you is this is not something that we're waiting until 2027 to start. You will see that we have already attracted world-class scientists. They are recruiting with as much energy as they can, outstanding people to work in those institutes and units. And we have also attracted some outstanding students, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So this is the opportunity that we bring everything together. So it's sort of as occurred at Bell Laboratories for a number of decades, which, by the way, with this sort of strategic mix of fundamental science and commitment towards translation, as you probably know, resulted in, I think, 9 Nobel Prizes, as well as a number of fundamental, tangible contributions like the transistor and other things that are in your cell phone today. So that's the opportunity, and I'm very excited to say that what's happened in just 2 years is pretty remarkable. The other critical, I think, parameter or ingredient to the success that has been achieved by the extraordinary people that are at EIT right now is the decision to focus. These difficult, hairy, wicked problems really require focus. I want to give credit to Larry Ellison, to Sir John Bell, for going through this process, this iterative process of thinking about what are the problems we really want to solve, and what are the kinds of institutes and programs we want to create, and can we recruit really the highest caliber people to to address these issues. And so you can see here that the decision was made over some period of time to really focus on what are called at EIT humane endeavors. And you can see here, I don't know if this is a pointer, but you can see that one large sort of section of the work at EIT is focused on health, medical science, and generative biology. And you'll see in a subsequent slide the outstanding scientists that have been recruited to focus in that area. It's truly world-class. Research is happening and will just continue to grow as we scale. And this is a big year for EIT as we scale from some 300 and something individuals to just under 1,000. And we will continue to scale in the months and years ahead. And this is really quite a heavy lift and really a testimony to the people at EIT, what they have achieved as someone who's come late in the game is truly remarkable. So health, medicine, generative biology is one area. Another area which is exciting is addressing food security, the fact that we may not be able to produce enough food for the growing population in the context of climate change, the crisis, the emergency that we are facing as a civilization, and how can we leverage science, molecular biology of plants to try to address the issue of food insecurity and to make agriculture more sustainable in climates that would be challenging, for example, droughts, and how can we make the food that we do produce more nourishing, for example. And the beauty of plant molecular biology is that there are now the tools and the genes and the knowledge to actually modify plants and seeds to, in fact, accomplish that. The third area is to focus on climate change, managing atmospheric CO2. And the fourth, as I said, is sort of a horizontal enabling strand, in addition to an area of science in its own right, which is really being at the cutting edge of artificial intelligence and robotics. And there's been a significant investment in building that to really accelerate progress towards solutions in the other three areas as well. So let me talk to you a little bit about our work. We are looking at these humane endeavors. The scientists are already on the ground. They're already doing experiments, trying to test hypotheses and create solutions. And this will just grow as we move on during the time course of this institute. There are 9 institutes or programs that have been funded to date. 7 of them are intimately connected with Oxford University, which was part of our intention, was to be part of the Oxford University community. 2 of them involve people who have come from the outside, and there will be people, a global search for scientists and for students and postdoctoral fellows to populate each of these different areas. The first up there, you can see Jason Chin, who was at the Laboratory of Molecular Biology affiliated with Cambridge University, an MRC funded institute which is world-renowned. He's very well known, as you know, for his pioneering work in generative biology and the writing, if you will, of genomes and many chromosomes. So Jason is heading up a very large institute called the GBI, and I've been able to tour the buildings with him. He's so excited, and really world-class facilities exist at GBI. The next area of these that have been funded, you can see Steve Kelly from Oxford. He is heading the Plant Biology Institute. You have 2 individuals from Oxford, Chris Holmes and Cecilia Lindgren, who are focusing on something in the institute called AIR, which is artificial intelligence and robotics. They have a major push, and the momentum is really remarkable in their group. Andrew Scott, as you know, a renowned economist, is focusing on a number of things related to health span, as well as new topics that he will focus on in the upcoming year. Professor Gil McVean, also from Oxford. Andrew was at LBS, Gil McVean is from Oxford, and he's working on the Pathogen Project, which is really a mechanism to train LLMs so that we can be better equipped in responding to future pandemics early on when they can be detected, perhaps in hospitals or on the ground. And you know Hagen Bailey from Oxford, from the chemistry department, who is a remarkable fundamental scientist, but also an entrepreneur in founding Oxford Nanopore Technologies, or ONT, on the Oxford Science Park campus. So those are projects that are funded on the EIT campus. And here are three areas that are funded elsewhere at the university or elsewhere in the world. And these are already rolling, and there's very exciting data that's already coming out of these investments in collaborative research between Oxford University and EIT. Sir Andrew Pollard is working with a number of collaborators both at Oxford and EIT on something called the correlates of immunity, leveraging AI that's being built at EIT Oxford. Professor Sir Peter Bruce, Lee Johnson, and Paul Schering are collaborating, and I've visited this project. It's pretty remarkable what they're doing in developing lithium air batteries, which have extraordinary potential, and there's a lot of hope that they may eventually substitute current batteries. And there's an investment with the Gates Foundation in something called the Africa Clinical Research Network, or ACRN. And what's happening there is pretty remarkable and very, very important for clinical trials. As for many of you that are involved in clinical trials, there are insufficient numbers of subjects for many trials to advance. And this is a collaboration by the Gates Foundation and EIT to create the infrastructure, the compute power, and the kind of quality control required to advance clinical trials faster for people around the world. And that is progressing in a very promising way. So that gives you an idea of the 9 projects that have been funded by the Ellison Institute of Technology. And it's extraordinary the progress that has been made in under 2 years. Now, I said that part of the secret sauce, or part of the strategy, is to do this in the context of a great university. And when I talked to Larry Ellison, he has said that during the pandemic, he was just incredibly impressed with the quality of this university and also the example of what happened during COVID with the collaborations that occurred here to generate one of the COVID vaccines. And so, because he was so impressed, he wanted to contribute and also to be part of this extraordinary milieu. And so, my predecessor, Sir John Bell, Irene Tracy, and a number of people in this room and around the university really sat down and said, how can we create a situation where there's true synergy between EIT Oxford and Oxford University? And we were very grateful for this alliance. That's one of the most important priorities for me and for EIT, is to build this relationship with Oxford University. And so we want it to be a unique, synergistic, symbiotic partnership that brings together world-leading researchers at both the Oxford side and the EIT side. There are growing numbers of cross-appointments of scientists between EIT Oxford and Oxford University. That is incredibly important to really integrate what we're doing, and so there can be an amplification of the collaborations that can occur. I'm excited to see some of the EIT faculty go into the departments and talk to their colleagues, talk about how they can jointly mentor students. And so this strategic alliance and a significant investment by EIT in the core mission of the university is really a very, very important platform of this approach. And there have been doctoral programs launched. For example, there's the University of Oxford EIT CDT, or Center for Doctoral Training in Artificial Intelligence. That makes sense. It's a win-win for Oxford and for EIT. And there is a doctoral program just announced in generative biology, or GBI, from that institute. So This gives you an idea that in addition to research collaborations, that there's a substantial investment in education, linking EIT, Oxford, and Oxford University. So I said students. There's some of the students here. Some of you, I think, are Ellison scholars. Let's look. Wave your hand if you're an Ellison scholar. You are the future. You are the future of everything that we're trying to do. And I had a chance to meet some of the Ellison scholars. They're extraordinary. They have gone through a process inspired by the Rhodes Scholarship mechanism. And just take a moment and go online and look at the biographies of the students that have been attracted here. At both the undergraduate and graduate level, they're extraordinary. And that is a benefit of the synergy as well. They will do the research. They will learn to be entrepreneurs. They will benefit from this strategic alliance between EIT and Oxford University. And what's amazing is that this commitment from the Ellison Institute is for students across the continuum of education, both undergraduate students, but doctoral students, new doctoral programs. That's hopefully a clear demonstration of our commitment to Oxford University. And they're extraordinary. So the last thing I say is, I'll keep this a minimum because I spoke too long. I apologize, but I'm too excited. And I wanted to just convey to you how much progress has been made. And there's much more that will come this year and into the future. I don't know if Lisa Flashner is here. She's our Chief Operating Officer. None of this would have happened without her and her team. Some of our team here. If you're part of the EIT team, so working on this campus, please raise your hand so we can recognize you. It's extraordinary what they've all done to, in a very short period of time, create these programs and create a magnificent campus that in 2027 will open. Right? It's going to open in 2027. So this has been being built in Littlemore, not too far from here. And what's remarkable, and I want to thank and really congratulate Lisa, because it's her hard work, her vision, and those of her team, that the commitment grew just a few months ago from 300,000 square feet to over 2 million square feet of space on this campus. And if you know university campuses, you know that's a lot of space. And that's quite an extraordinary commitment in EIT and in this Oxford ecosystem. So I said that we were inspired by Oxford University. You can see what Oxford Science Park used to look like on the left. Very functional. Car park in the middle, some laboratories around it. And then you can see that the approach was to look at inspirational campuses, like Oxford University. You can see this is Radcliffe camera, it's beautiful. How can you not be impressed and inspired when you walk past it? And there are spaces, quadrangles, spaces for people to sit together to discuss topics across disciplines. We wanted to replicate that. And so you can see Foster and Partners, the renowned architectural firm based here in London, the Ellison Institute of Technology is working with them on a daily basis. And you can see there's a master plan. I don't know what you're pointing to, but hopefully you'll like it. My friends say that this dome is kind of like Epcot Center. But in any case, you can see it's a complete transformation. There are carefully planned spaces that will hopefully inspire faculty and students as they walk through the campus. You can see quite a few laboratories. There will actually even be a recreational ground. So any Ellison scholars here, I challenge you to a game of football. But there will be those sorts of things. As you can see, there's a future train station there, the Cowley Brent Station, which is another major achievement over the past few months. So it gives you an idea that there's a real plan, and these are some schematics of what the campus will look like once it's transformed. There'll be beautiful water features, lots of trees, landscaping is carefully thought through. There will be a 500-seat amphitheater, kind of the size, but in one of those sort of domes, spheres that you saw, where hopefully some of you will speak about collaborations with EIT. This is an example of some of the existing buildings that are being renovated in Littlemore. I think that I will be, as an administrator, banished to this one of these buildings, not in the beautiful building that you saw in the previous slide. But you can see here, there's a lot of thought in the spaces and the materials that are being used. There are not only laboratories and clinics, but there will be a library for people to get together. This looks kind of like something from a movie. There's a walkway because to get from one part of campus to another, you need the train is such that you need to have a walkway. And so there'll be this walkway, but in the middle of the walkway will be this, what we call a nest, I think, which will be a place you can stop and talk to people along the way from point A to point B, which I think is really remarkable. And some more pictures. And I think I've done enough of that, and I think we need to have our fireside chat without fire. But I hope that gives you an idea of the momentum and the tremendous progress that has been made at EIT Oxford. Thank you so much.
Please, sit over there.
This one? No.
Over there. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mette, for the intro, and thank you, Professor Santa Ono, for joining us today. I mean, listening to the foundation vision that you have for EIT, I can, what an exciting mission you have ahead of you. That's really,
we're very excited.
Yes, considering that that's one of the most recent and biggest developments in the ecosystem in Oxford. So let's dig a bit deeper on the Institute. And I mean, obviously, the Ellison Institute has been described as a new model. And I would like to, for tackling global challenges, so in your view, what would you say that truly distinguishes it from other traditional research institutes or centers? What would you say?
It's the mix of commitment to fundamental research, like the continuum, and to investments in infrastructure and people who understand how to efficiently, because it's not easy, move from a fundamental discovery to something that's commercializable, as they say, and also commitment to the next generation through the Ellison Scholars Program. You have bits of that at many universities, but this kind of strategic creation of a mini ecosystem within a larger ecosystem that is Oxford or Oxford-Cambridge is pretty unique.
That's the key differentiator, you would say. And in terms, I mean, everyone talks about interdisciplinary and is often discussed, but as you know, is very difficult to implement. So what are the practical choices that you are making to really ensure that collaboration happens, but also there's an integration within Oxford's culture?
I would say, as I said, this is a relatively new endeavor. And where we are right now is, as you saw, identification of the areas to invest and the recruitment of world-class leaders to head each of those. And many of those are from Oxford, and some of them are not. I would say that we're talking about that as we speak. There was an offsite, and the senior leaders that you saw on the slide have come together and are thinking about, very intentionally, about how do we not only create an institute with a plant biology institute and a generative biology institute and AI and robotics, but how do we come together at seminars or casually when we eat together? How do we commit to each other to make EIT the reality, the vision of reality? And so that's where we are, to be very honest. In terms of our interaction with Oxford, I think it's quite well developed for a variety of reasons, but we want to do even more. I think part of it is because the degrees are Oxford degrees, and we have an alliance committee between EIT and Oxford, and we work through these things. Since it's something that's new, it's a startup, there is always work to do when you're creating something new. But I have to tell you that in the very few months that I've been here, the Oxford University members of the Alliance Committee have been extraordinarily helpful. They've been very honest about when they want to see more interaction, more collaboration, and we've worked to realize that. And so since the scholars are here, and a lot of energy was put in that very early on in the inception of the Institute, I think that is going well, but we are committed to growing it even further and making it a very robust relationship. In terms of the institute itself, we're right now building the buildings, starting to scale the laboratories, but we are talking about how to make sure that when they're built out and people are recruited, that we have introduced the mechanisms to promote the interdisciplinarity, which, as you say, is easier said than done.
Yeah, definitely. And how do you manage, moving towards the investigators, how do you manage intellectual freedom for them, considering that they are embedded within the Institute's mission-driven goals? How do you manage that freedom for them?
You know, we have recruited some extraordinary scientists to the Institute. I would say, like I mentioned in my brief talk, one of the things that's unique about EIT is we've recruited people that have this thirst to generate a solution. And we also make it clear that it's part of what we are. It's part of our vision. And it's for that reason that Larry and I and others look at the progress of every single institute every single week. That's unusual for a university. But we've chosen people who understand that that's how you make real progress towards a goal. You know, I think that that's going to be key moving forward.
Okay, perfect. So let's move away from the Institute and more into your leadership journey. Because, I mean, I found very interesting facts about your father. Takashi Ono was a mathematician with academic posts in both Canada and in the US. One of your brothers, Ken Ono, is also a mathematician at the University of Virginia. Another brother, Momoro, is a music professor, so the academic achievement runs in the family. So congratulations for that. Your brother Ken has now moved to Axiom Math.
Axiom. Yeah.
Axiom. And you just moved to this institute. So I found that was a perfect example of how two kids have moved from academia to cutting-edge innovation. So, I mean, considering that you are an internationally respected academic leader, with a career spanning from research excellence, leadership at major universities, and obviously a distinguished scientist in immunology and biomedical, like Mette highlighted. So could you reflect on the journey that brought you to Oxford today?
Well, I've always wanted to be at Oxford. You know, it's the best university in the world, in my view. It's a very, very special place. I was in the UK 25 years ago at University College London. Yeah. And so whenever I came up here, I was jealous of the spaces and UCL is a great school too, but also the excellence of the faculty and students. Let me answer your question about my family. My father just passed away a few days ago. And I think that, to answer your question, he was pivotal towards the way we think, the way we approach life. As a professor, although he was a mathematician, a number theorist, he double majored in piano and in maths at University of Tokyo. And he always regretted not becoming a concert pianist. And so I think he was kind of living through his kids vicariously. And my brother Ken has become a world-class mathematician. And I'll get to the transition to a company in a second. And the story is similar, not exactly the same, between my brother Ken and myself, why we've moved from academia to these different models of still science. Yeah. And I'll answer that, and some of it's very topical with what's happening in the world today. But getting back to my father, to finish that loop, he loved biology, he loved music, he loved mathematics, he loved philosophy. And so our meals were very unusual. He had a chalkboard, and every dinner we didn't know what we were going to get. We could have a lecture about the Iliad or the Odyssey, or about the Krebs cycle, or about algebraic number theory. And these are things that, as little kids, we didn't really understand what he was talking about. We thought he was rather strange. Wow. But nevertheless, he brought us together and made us think across disciplines. Yeah. And so he instilled in us a love for curiosity, a love for knowledge, and I'm forever grateful to him.
Yeah, well.
For that. Sorry about that, guys.
No.
But the question about why Ken and I moved from universities, part of it has to do with it's a challenging time to be in universities. It's a very challenging time to be a university president. Here, in Canada, in the United States in particular. Yeah. And so part of the movement was because that is such a challenge. But part of it was also because of the magic and opportunity of a new model like EIT for me.
Yeah.
And for my brother, Ken, he could have gone anywhere.
Yeah.
But he decided to work for someone in her 20s, who's a Rhodes Scholar, by the way. And she set up a company working towards superintelligence. And Axiom is one of the two major AI companies that is leveraging world-class mathematicians to train LLMs to see if that can push the envelope towards superintelligence. And I don't want to steal his thunder. He's speaking at Oxford in the Mathematics Institute in a few months. You will hear from him. The findings are extraordinary. Some of you may know, if you're mathematicians or you were interested in maths as a student, there's a great examination in North America, perhaps here as well, called the Putnam exam. And there are 12 questions. And even the best mathematics students rarely get half of them right. And they don't have time to finish. If you ask AI to do it, he just announced this, so I'm not leaking something, but it's in the public domain that it got all 12 of them right in record time. And so a lot of people ask themselves, and there's some people here at Oxford who ask the question, what is science going to be? What is education going to be in the future? Will we all be out of jobs? And these are questions we have to ask. And I tell you, my brother, a world-class mathematician, he'll talk about it when he comes here. It's really extraordinary what AI can do. It's beyond what either he or I predicted.
Yeah. So we can probably get him to bring him as a speaker to the business school shortly through you.
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, it's a startup. They've gotten startup funding. They're going to scale.
So exactly.
Talking about the financing of startup companies and all that in an incredibly competitive landscape of AI.
Perfect. That would be brilliant. And you've led institutions across different cultures and different countries. So what would you say, what experiences have shaped you and your leadership approach more broadly? What would you like to highlight?
You know, I'm often asked the question, are universities all the same? And I think you probably heard from my remarks that universities are very different. Structurally, they have administrators, they have faculty, they have students, they have laboratories. But the ethos is really tangibly different from place to place. It was that which attracted Larry Ellison to Oxford, was that ethos. It is not traditional in North America for education of undergraduates to be through the tutorial system. It's extraordinary. You know, the typical North American lecture is you have a professor, maybe not even a tenured professor, giving a class to thousands of people, right? And then to have some graduate students who are serving as TAs. And that's pretty much the level of instruction and tuition that you get. I've been so proud to be part of Worcester College. There's some people from Worcester here. And I know from them that you focus on just a few students every term. It is not normal. I mean, it's great, and it's special. And it's not, even though everyone recognizes it's the way to teach, it really hasn't been replicated in many places for, in many cases, financial reasons. But that's special. And to answer your question, have I learned? So I've been at Kyoto University. I did a sabbatical with somebody called Tasuku Honjo, who won the Nobel Prize for PD-1, checkpoint inhibitors in therapy of cancer. Yeah. Totally different. It's a laboratory, but the way the laboratory runs is very different from what would happen at LMB and would happen in Toronto or would happen in Vancouver. Very different ethos. Great science happens at all those places, but you learn from each environment something you take away. And as an administrator, your job is to try to create that environment and ethos that brings the best from all parts of the world to create, if there is a perfect environment for science.
Yeah, and you will find that Oxford is very different from all those other universities that because I've been here for around 8 years, but I don't think I've still learned it properly, so it's very different. So moving towards the impact, I mean, I was also surprised the fact that you have an honorary degree in theology, which underlines your unusual blend of scientific and ethical interests. So from Oxford, what would you say is Oxford's ethical responsibility to society, given our global influence and the convening power that we have?
You know, especially with the unprecedented, unpredicted power of AI and robotics as well, machine learning, there's some great work happening at Oxford, asking questions about our responsibility as scholars, as scientists, as universities, as institutions, in making sure we do this the right way. At EIT, there'll be people asking the question of what will the impact be of this powerful transformational technology on society, on economies. And we ought to be doing that. If you look at the impact of social media and mobile phones on mental health, it's incontrovertible that we should have thought about it more. And if you look at the testimonies in Congress, if you look at what certain nations are doing to limit exposure at too young an age, if we had been more responsible as people who created these technologies, then some lives would have been saved. And so, to answer your question, we have tremendous responsibility. And that's one of the reasons it's great that we're at Oxford University, is that there are ethicists here. There are people that will ask difficult questions and say, you know, this is all exciting. You can do things faster. You can do rational drug design and structural biology in a way you couldn't have dreamt of, which is all true. But we also need people to ask the tough questions about, well, what if? Or what's the consequence of it? And I don't think that, with the exception of a few of the AI companies, that that's even a thought in many of them. And so if you think about Hinton, the Nobel laureate and godfather of AI, we should listen to him. He was right. He said a couple of years ago, this is going to become much more powerful than people think. We ought to think about it. He was right.
Yeah, definitely. So I just want to ensure that we leave some time for questions. How are we doing in terms of time? We have until 1:15, right? Only 7 minutes. And 1:15, yeah? Okay, brilliant, because I was going to move into the fascinating topic of entrepreneurship, which is the one I deeply care about. So from your perspective, where does entrepreneurship sit within a research-intensive institution like Oxford? And how should students and faculty think about translating ideas into impact? What's your thinking about that?
I think it's incredibly important. And I'm excited that it's an area of focus at this Said Business School. You know, scaling discoveries into companies that are robust economically, financially, has an economic impact on the region. That's one of the drivers of understanding how to be an entrepreneur, how to scale companies from a few hundred to a few thousand, and how to keep them in the country as opposed to having them move towards where the VCs are, right? And so thinking about that is important for Britain. It's important for Europe. It's important that we teach that. And we're going to do that. The business school, Said Business School, and EIT. I think that will be a legacy of our partnership. But as I said, there are existential challenges that we face. Will we be able to create enough food? Will we be able to address the climate emergency? You know, all of those things require that we think about entrepreneurship, that we do it better, that we train the next generation of people, not only with the tools, but how to approach something and to understand the challenge of getting something from the laboratory to the bedside, from the laboratory to the pharmacy, for example. And it's right that Oxford think about that, and it's right that the ecosystem think about it.
Yeah, and I was going to mention, the collaboration that we've started from the business school with our colleagues in EIT to support with some entrepreneurial training and entrepreneurship training for those scholars willing to. So obviously that will evolve in the future, and that's something that I'm very excited about. So probably skipping a lot of questions because I want to ensure that I give you, the audience, time to, but probably focusing just on my last. I'm skipping around 6 or 7 questions, so I had a huge amount of them. But probably, so looking into, because we've spoken about science quite a lot, but I'm aware that there are a lot of non-STEM disciplines that we have in the university, like humanities, social sciences, law, that are very relevant. And what roles do you see playing in addressing all these kind of challenges that the Ellison Institute is focusing on? Because there's a big portion of students studying that, and I want them to listen to how important their background is too.
It's incredibly important, and there's actually something in the internet, in the public. I was interviewed by CBC Radio in Canada when I was president of UBC about how the liberal arts are more important now than ever before. I would say, and that's several years old, I would say the liberal arts are even more important today than then. We need to learn from the great books. We need to learn from history. We need to learn from philosophers. We need to be reminded and anchored in the beauty of art and music. And so if you look around the world, too many great universities are defunding those areas. And it's a tragic mistake. And I hope it never happens at Oxford.
Yes, brilliant. And a little bird has told me that you are a great cellist. So probably we could organize a concert and go for a drink at the Eagle and Child, hopefully soon. When we will be able to enjoy that pub, do you think? You know?
Oh, I don't know. So
there's not a date.
When do you think
Claire?
the Eagle and Child will be ready?
Ready? Okay, so we can book that in the agenda. Brilliant. So let's move to some questions in the audience. And
I know many of you sent questions and we skipped over them because of the time. I apologize for that. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, that man.
Thank you very much for that pitch, and my deepest sympathies for the loss of your father.
Thank you.
You've talked about the moral imperative, and I think we'd all be encouraged by that. But aside from the economic benefits of commercialization of the ideas that you're driving, have you incorporated any explicit links with the public sector in the work that you're doing in EIT?
Can you expand a little bit on that? I'd love to.
So, for example, have you any links with any government departments, sort of any scholars from ministries or anything working within the organisation? Are you addressing specific issues that are faced by government and the state, or are you focused and driven specifically by commercialising ideas?
There is a tremendous interest in what we're doing, not only in the UK government, but governments around the world. They're excited, to be frank. There have been a number of outreaches to us from governments in the UK, ministers in the UK, as well as other nations. We've gotten visits from Japan, and all over the world, really. And I personally feel a great responsibility. We were founded to try to solve some of these existential challenges, and we focused our research on humane endeavors with the idea of creating solutions to solve those issues. So not just commercial, not at all. I fully expect that some of the solutions may not be, cash positive. Hopefully the portfolio will be, but it's not just the bottom line from my perspective. It was founded with a responsibility. We're creating something that we think will be something that hopefully catalyzes the ecosystem here, and across a number of different issues and approaches that are needed. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, great. Very.
But it's still early days though. But that's my view.
Thank you.
there was a... Yeah.
Thank you. Over here.
Oh,
Yes.
hi.
Over there.
I work with Innovate UK, who work with a lot of research programs touching on the themes you're focused on. Is there a vision for being able to work with other startups that haven't come through the training route at EIT, i.e. Oxford-based startups or broader initiatives?
You know, I had a chance to talk to Larry about this question several weeks ago, and he wants this to be a place where people come from all over the world who want to collaborate with us. And I can tell you, in knowing the scientists that we've recruited, that's the way they work. For example, if you know Jason, he has collaborators all around the world. And so every great institution will build bridges. And I cannot imagine an EIT that would be a fortress, just focused on what it's doing. But for it to be what it's meant to be, we will need to be a place that attracts great people from around the world and collaborates with outstanding scientists wherever they might be. I know for a fact that when I spoke with Larry, he said, you know, perhaps we will invest in a great computer scientist or someone who is fantastic in pluripotent stem cells, not here in Oxford, but elsewhere, because that is the kind of collaboration that's needed to solve a problem. So hopefully that illustrates the approach. We're not going to be a fortress. Yeah.
This gentleman in the fourth row, yeah. Thank you.
Professor Santaonas, thanks so much. So I'd like you to perhaps comment on the aspect of urgency, because a lot of those problems you highlight in there, it needs to be addressed very quickly. Of course, I run research charity, and we understand how important that is. Now, the question I have for you is that a lot of innovation comes in quickly, but they're normally hampered not by money or entrepreneurship, but actually by regulation, right? Regulatory or public acceptance. And that's not only at one country, but at a global level, different dimensions of that. Can you comment a little bit more on how EIT is thinking about addressing those, instead of doing it sequentially, but actually already thinking about how to pave the way for the innovation to land?
I mean, that's an incredibly important point, even in the area of pharmaceuticals, right? If you look at what's happening at the NIH, there are fast-track mechanisms to do clinical trials. And new technologies, I think, will allow us to even shorten the time. So we do know there's an urgency. I can tell you that the scientists know that there's an urgency. There's a lot of focus on new approaches that don't exist currently, that will shorten the time of experimentation. Certain things just take a certain amount of time. If you're looking at a mouse and you're breeding them, you really can't accelerate that. And in a generation of seeds, it's relatively slow. But around those, in the margins, there are lots of things that are being thought through precisely because this is an emergency.
Thank you. That lady over there. Excuse me.
Thank you very much. And I'm a molecular researcher in Oxford. As you mentioned, I'm also considering an entrepreneur and so on. So you asked about, you mentioned that Oxford is a good place, and EIT is trying to bring the best from the world. And I wondered how to define best, because it's very hard to give a definition on that based on what we want to do, right? So for example, my research is about space technology, and we're talking about both technology and also regulation around. We need a combined effort to find a rational solution. Thank you.
No, I think it's a very good point. It's very difficult to be clear and certain about whether you're making the right picks. You know, it's if you look at some of the most transformational science, there's a friend of mine called Peter Cullis, who made a nano particles that are used in mRNA vaccines. If you look at the early papers that the Canadian government funded, they weren't in Cell or Nature or Science. Many of them were in BBRC or BBA, papers that aren't read that widely beyond people in the specialty field. But it was nevertheless essential. It was necessary. It was the best. And so you're absolutely right. And the converse is true. There are some things that have a big splash in Cell or Nature and Immunity in the year or years when it's published, since it's published, but then it doesn't have lasting value decades later. Might even be inaccurate, right? Because imperfections in approaches, which is where we're getting better at how we do experiments. And so, absolutely, it's important for that reason. I mean, some of the most important approaches to medicine in the UK were not funded by the MRC, or there had to be arguments to get them funded. Great foundational ideas like the biobank, or really organizing data. You know, these are advances that were pioneered in the UK, but initially, because they were sort of forks in the road, if you will, not immediately embraced. And so your point is a very good one. We have to have an open mind to what is important, what is the best, and listen to the dissenting voice, because sometimes that's the voice that's correct.
Thank you. Yes. This man in the third row. Over here, yeah. Yes.
By the way, I don't
This
have
one
a
here.
hard stop, so if you want to keep talking, we can keep talking.
This one here on the...
I
Well,
love
we
talking
have-
to you guys. So, yeah.
We have around 40 questions from online audience, so I will have to go at some point, but yes, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Hadi from the Oxford DIP AI diploma. You've said that on social media and smartphone, we should have thought it differently. So when it comes to AI, what's your view on how can we be more proactive than reactive to this technology? What's your thought on that?
Well, you know about the teens that commit suicide because of their interaction with chatbots. And you know that certain nations have banned it, you know, below a certain age. I think that's a bold action. And although there's a mixed reaction to that kind of regulation, that's an example of how we need to think about you know, the negative consequences of powerful technologies. So I don't know if that answers your question. Yeah, but that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yes, please. Over there.
It's a parochial question, really. It's back to the lamb and flag. It's a great mystery to the citizens of Oxford why EIT have taken over one of our local pubs.
Oh,
How,
well,
how does this fit into this great scheme of things, or does it?
Yeah, but there's a reason. There's a reason. I'll tell you, at Worcester College, I think there's a senior common room, there's a junior common room, and there's usually a pub. In most of these colleges, there's pubs, right? And the Inklings, right? They Tolkien and Lewis, they would go there regularly, and I think that's part of the secret of the Oxford environment. And so, seriously, you do amazing things when you get together with people in an interdisciplinary way with a catalyst of alcohol. Don't you agree? I mean, in the colleges that I visited, after dinner, often you retreat to another room and there's alcohol, even more alcohol. And so yeah. I'm not encouraging alcoholism, but I think that to answer your question seriously, it's something that clearly is an important part of Oxford history. You know, the books that they wrote captured the imagination of so many. Right, it's still today, and it's a jewel, and you know it went into disrepair during the pandemic, and Larry Ellison really, I think, decided he wanted to bring it back to what it was, because it was an important part of this community, and I applaud him for that. Part of it will be renovated, I think, in the upper levels for our Ellison scholars. We don't have a college. Our scholars are in colleges. But we wanted to have a space where our scholars could come together and call their own. So I don't know if any of the scholars are excited about that, but it'll be that sort of space. Look at that.
They look like very excited.
To have their own home. So they'll have two homes. They'll have a home in the college and they'll have a home just for them. Mm-hmm. Does that answer your question?
So probably last one over here. So I think you you raised your hand first. So this gentleman in the fifth row over there. Here, yeah, with the orange jumper.
Hi, good afternoon, evening even. To sort of draw together some of the themes, it's been really exciting. I work on the science park. I've seen this being created, and it's immense to watch this evolve. You've talked about it not wanting to be a fortress, and you've talked about it wanting it to be part of the education system. It's in Littlemore. It's next to Blackbird Leys. They're two really deprived areas. Has there been any thinking beyond smuggling a cricket pitch onto your designs about how to inspire those bits of Oxford that sit next to you that might look at you and go, that's not for me. There's a lot of money there, but that's not for me.
So I don't know if you know this, but this morning there's a Oxford-Cambridge corridor, a paper that just came out. Neil Coleman, I think, is the name of one of the authors of it. You should read it. And he asked me the exact same question. And the answer is we need to reach into those schools. When I was president of the University of Cincinnati in Ohio, if you know Cincinnati, it's in an area which is not wealthy. And we formed a partnership with a high school just in the corner of the campus. It's called the Hughes High School. They didn't have microscopes. They didn't have centrifuges. They didn't have test tubes. They didn't have inspiring teachers. I hope that as we stand up the Ellison Institute, we'll have open days, much as UCL has had, opening it up to the citizens and the children nearby so they can be inspired. The instrumentation at EIT is extraordinary. You can resolve by cytometry individual human chromosomes. It's extraordinary. Things that I couldn't do, we couldn't even dream of doing when I was a student. They can see that. You saw that big amphitheater for 500 people. I would love to have students come there. And I will personally talk to them because I want some of those kids in the neighborhood to be inspired and to go to Oxford University through an Ellison scholarship and eventually to work as a scientist at EIT. And so we talked about it today. We don't have firm plans because we're at the stage where we're 2 years old and we're scaling. But it's something that I'm passionate about and I would want to do. And not just in the neighborhood. Whatever we can do, sharing our lectures through YouTube to inspire people around the world. Those are things that I believe, since much has been given to us, much is expected of us to give back to the community. So thank you for your question.
Well, thank you. Let me run quickly through a couple of online questions, because the drinks and the nibbles will wait for us. So, Divian Bhavan, do you think EIT will expand beyond the UK? And if so, how do you envision this growth taking place?
You know, I'd say that conversations we've had really focusing on, we want to get Oxford right. Mm-hmm. Ellison Institutes, actually, there has been a significant investment in Los Angeles, initially with the University of Southern California. So there's a medical institute already there. Focuses primarily on cancer, on colorectal cancer, prostate cancer, breast cancer. Here, certainly we're doing medical research here as well, but it's not just focused on cancer, it's focused on medicine broadly defined and biological processes broadly defined. You know, like I said, there's an interest as we build EIT Oxford and in thinking about people that we will collaborate with who may not be at Oxford, they might even be at Cambridge, who we might want. Say that. It might make sense to support because they collaborate with people in Oxford.
Yeah.
So.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for the question. And probably business ecosystem, that's kind of covered. There are around 40 questions. So I know you are not in a rush, but probably let me grab the last one.
Pick a hard one.
It's a hard one. Well, they are all very, how do you define value? Yeah.
Quick one whilst you're waiting.
Yes.
I'm familiar a bit with Larry Ellison because I've worked with Oracle in the past.
Okay.
And I was just wondering if they seem completely separate. Is that the case, or is there any intention for collaboration between the Oracle, you know, the sort of founder of Mr. Ellison's wealth, and the institute that you're setting up?
I mean, there are interactions between Oracle and almost every university, almost every jurisdiction in government. That's how expansive Oracle is. And certainly, there are people who know each other. We are independent institutions, to be clear. But I certainly do talk to people at Oracle. It's an incredible investment in research that occurs there as well. And I think that's something, the reason why Oracle has been so successful for so long, from the 70s, is that there's a recognition that investment in R&D is what keeps something competitive and current. And so, does that answer your question? We do have the same founder. We're distinct organizations. We know each other. And so to the extent that people at Oxford would interact with Oracle, we would interact with Oracle where it makes sense.
Thank you. Okay, and I promised last but not least, a difficult one, yeah, you said you wanted.
Yeah.
Dawat Mulumba, how do you define value for money on a project of this scale? And what's been the biggest challenge about the program so far?
Well, so you heard somebody from the Oxford Science Park saying there's so many cranes, right? And I said, I've never seen anything like this in my life, anything of this scale and magnitude. And with that comes, I think, every one of us, there are a number of people from EIT here, a responsibility, feeling responsibility. We want to get this right for Larry Ellison. We want to get it right for the people that are the reason why he founded EIT. We want to come forward with solutions for these humane endeavors focused on existential issues. That's a lot of pressure because there's an urgency to it. Like I said, I wanted to focus on the contributions of Lisa Flashner and her team. What has been accomplished in 2 years is extraordinary. It's come with blood, sweat, and tears. They've worked incredibly hard. What you saw, retrofitting these buildings, building new buildings in record time, recruiting hundreds of scientists and soon to be nearly 1,000 by the end of this year, is hard work. And so it's a testimony to them. None of that's easy. It would be, I've just come here recently, right? All of the people who have been there before me, they deserve the credit for what EIT has become. So to answer your question, it's not been easy. It's not going to be easy this year. Yeah. We have a responsibility to realize Larry's vision. We don't want to have 9 programs that there's no interdisciplinary activity. We have a responsibility to the students. These are some of the best students in the world. And so as we speak, we're thinking about, with you and others, how do we make sure that we satisfy their desire to be entrepreneurs, that we educate them at the very highest level. Because that investment, to answer your question about how do we measure success, it'll be through them. It'll be through seeing the satisfaction in their eyes that they have experienced something wonderful at Oxford and EIT. It'll be seeing them create startups that solve these issues. It won't be traditional metrics like how many papers in high-impact journals. It'll be a higher bar, really, of have we achieved transformational solutions for these problems? And these are really hard problems. And so we'll have to wait and see how we do. But we have extraordinary people, we have extraordinary students, and I'm optimistic.
Brilliant. Well, please join me in saying thank you to Professor Ono for the very... It's been a lovely conversation, at least from my side. I've enjoyed a lot. And I have a small gift as a thank you for you.
Thank you.
I know you liked when we walked away. Thank you.
Oh.
So
oh my goodness, a swag bag.
This is for you to remember us, yeah?
Oh,
when you wear it, yeah? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You can try it on. You can try it to see if it's the right size, yeah? Otherwise.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone, and please feel free to join us for some drinks.